one of the benefits of serving a lot of sales organizations over the last few years is that I've had the opportunity to get insights into a lot of our customers and how those teams work. And there's not really a great language for this. So I've kind of started describing things with our own language. And the way we describe it now is that as a sales team grows, and really as a company grows, but it really is on the customer facing side, you end up with like a spectrum of how you end up, or of how you structure things and how you try to replicate success and scale effectively. Because generally you start with a small group of reps, and if you're growing, that means you've figured out something. So you've got some reps who are doing something well, but you end up taking one of two trajectories. It's either this very fluid, unstructured process, which most startups end up falling into, where it's kind of the Wild West, give people some rough guidance, but you ultimately become very dependent on these top reps who are the most talented ones. And that usually is really tough to scale because they've got unique insights. They've got this almost founder type DNA where you kind of have a feel for things and you can't really describe what you're doing in a conversation, but you just know how to demo a product. It can also just be down to straight charisma. And you happen to have some really just people who are great fits for the product you're doing and they're great on the phone like that. So it's just very hard to scale because those are hard things to teach. Or you take this other trajectory. So I call that like a fluid sales organization. The other side should call the more rigid sales org. And that's where you take the approach of saying, all right, well, we have a script, we have a process, and we have a list. Just apply the script and the process to the list and just scale that up and keep pumping in the money and pumping in and filling seats and hitting dials. And ultimately we'll fill out the spreadsheet. And as that grows, in theory, it always works because you're like, okay, we could just replicate these numbers. And if we've got 10 reps, why isn't this going to work when we have 50? But what ends up happening in reality is the numbers get way less efficient over time because you start playing a numbers game. And we all experience this probably daily, is when we get inundated with these pretty generic email messages, LinkedIn emails, or everything. When you're being treated as a number, you kind of feel like that. So all of a sudden customers are less responsive, prospects are less engaged, things just don't work as well. So while you have a script and a process that might be well organized, you end up just seeing a much higher cost of acquisition, pretty low morale on a sales team because it's not fun to work in an environment like that. And ultimately just it decreases in effectiveness to the point where you just end up creating this machine that just gets less and less efficient over time. So I see adaptive selling as kind of like the middle between those. It's where you are creating a process because you're not saying here, go off on your own. You have a process for people. But at the same time, that process has the flexibility to adapt to different situations and different customers.